Okay, our regularly scheduled council meeting of December 16th is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mulvey? Here. Councilmember Brinkman? Here. Councilmember Trujillo?
Here.
Councilmember Taylor?
Present.
Councilmember Cole? Here. And Councilmember Ostermiller?
Here. Would you all rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, are there any changes to the agenda? I would like to add an item 9E, which is the outreach schedule. We need a small discussion about what to do in January and February, at least.
With what?
With what to do with our outreach schedule for January and February.
Thank you.
Seeing no other changes, our agenda is approved with that one change. Minutes from the December 2nd meeting.
I have one. On page 4, line 184. I did check this on the video. This sentence should read, this does not cover schools. It covers, according to what Mr. Green said, PTOs, PTAs, and school-approved groups.
So you're suggesting this should change from this does not include schools, comma, only PTA organizations?
That sentence should be, this does not cover schools. It covers PTOs, PTAs, and school-approved groups.
Okay. Jim?
Doug, if you would look on page 7, because I've got two comments, both of them are concerning you. In line number 294, it says, Mayor Clark asked if the district ever, and I think the word should be never, with an N in it.
Yes.
I think that should be never instead of ever. Mm-hmm. And then when you turn to page 9, line 396, I think the word should be slightly with an S in it instead of lightly.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other changes?
On page 11, 478 through 480, Wendy, could you just go back and check that? That language doesn't seem quite right. Two topics we have together as a council for 2 years. If you could just review that and clean it up as necessary. And then on page 6, line 263, Imhoff, that's spelled incorrectly, and starts with an I.
H-O-F-F.
I am H-O-F. One F or
two Fs?
Two Fs.
Two Fs.
I'm sorry, could you spell that one more time, please?
I am H-O-F-F.
Any other changes?
Yeah, and on that page 2, I'm sorry, page 6, 3 places, Doug Farman's name is misspelled. It is spelled correctly in 256, but 270, 274, 281, it should be M-E-N.
Okay. Anything else? Then those minutes are approved with those changes.
Any new city employees?
No, sir, not tonight.
Okay. Guest citizens. We have Mr. Prado, King Super Security Guard. Can you come down, please? Stand in the center of attention area. Yes. This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize Jim Prado, a security officer at King Supers at Littleton Boulevard and Broadway, as a guest citizen and a recipient of the Littleton Police Department Citizens Appreciation Award. Mr. Prado has been a security investigator at King Supers for 16 years. On October 14th, he observed several individuals attempting to purchase items that are commonly used in the manufacture of methamphetamine. Recognizing the nature of the items, he reported the suspicious behavior to the Littleton police officers. He then isolated the subjects and their vehicle on the store security system. Follow-up by the Littleton police resulted in the discovery of a methamphetamine lab. Thanks to Prado's observations and knowledge, a meth lab was discovered, dismantled, and several arrests were made. This is hardly the first time that Mr. Prado has assisted the Littleton Police Department. Over the years, he has provided valuable information that has led to many arrests. The Littleton City Council and the Littleton Police Department and the citizens of Littleton extend their sincere appreciation to Jim Prado and commend his dedication to assisting the community, his employer, and the city in the prevention of crime and the apprehension of criminals.
And basically, Jim, what Mayor Clark just read to you is what is inscribed in this appreciation award that we want to present to you. But really, this really doesn't touch how much this man has had involvement. Now, I've read a lot of reports over the years that I've been reviewing reports, and I don't think anybody's name comes up as often and as many times as Jim does, not only in arresting people, assisting in the arrest of people, shoplifters at King Supers, but providing us a lot of intelligence information. I had the opportunity to speak with a couple of our special enforcement team officers right before I came down here, one of which described Jim as a gold mine of information and intelligence. And another one that said, you know, when I came on the department a few years back, my field training instructor took me up to King Supers to meet Jim and introduced me as, if you need to know any information about this area, you come and talk to Jim. So with a lot of appreciation, thank you very much.
You're welcome to say a few words if you would like.
But you don't have to. All right, we now have a scheduled public appearance by Mr. Taylor to talk to us about the Littleton Riverfront Authority.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about the Riverfront Authority. I asked Doug earlier tonight if I should give a very brief synopsis of how the Riverfront Authority got started and where we are up to this point. He said he thought it might be a good idea. Along about 1980, through a citizen's petition, the council created an urban renewal authority along the river on both sides of Bowles Avenue. The original encompassing about 20 acres. It's now where the Echo Star building sits. In 1983, the authority expanded the boundaries to take in properties south of Church, and it was the Anderson Nursery at the time, Arapahoe Nursery. State law allows an urban renewal authority to exist for 25 years. So the clock started ticking in 1980, but when we added to the boundaries in 1983, it started all over again with a new assessment. When the authority is created, it freezes the tax base. The taxes that go to each of the taxing entities is frozen. And the increment that comes from the assessed valuation increases over the next 25 years is what the authorities use to pay off their bonds. So we were paying off our bonds from the increase in taxes from the time that we became an authority until the shopping center went belly up. We used up all of our reserves, and finally we just had no money, and so we stopped making payments. The bondholders never declared us in default, which was a great thing because we didn't have to go through a whole bunch of hoops then when a buyer came along a few years later, a venture capitalist, and reinvested in that shopping center and eventually got EchoStar in there. When the new investors came about, a new series of bonds was created. And it was a series of bonds called A, B, and C. A and B went to the venture capitalists. They were out of Las Vegas and partly owned by an overseas group from Taiwan. And the C bonds were held by the city. The city's involvement is in this. In 1980, when the authority was first created, the city had the old city shops in that area. And we took over that property. We did not pay the city at the time for the property, so it became a debt upon the authority to pay. At that time, also, the city loaned us $200,000 just to cover our costs until money started flowing in a few years later. That rolled into the Series C bonds that the city now holds. So that's our A, B, and C bonds. A few years ago, we accumulated enough money to what we call defease the bonds for Series A. In other words, we put aside all the money it would take to pay off those Series A bonds. And then the payments get made twice a year in June and December until they were paid off in December 1st of this year. The Series B bonds, under contract with them, ended December 1st with their last payment. So the Series A and B bonds are gone away, practically. I'll get to that practically in just a moment. The Series C bonds, we've been making some payments toward that in the last few years. This gets us to December of '07, when we only meet once a year. We have to meet once a year to approve a budget to give it to the state. And that's the only time we meet, is an annual meeting in December. In December of '07, because we knew that '08 was to be our final year, we authorized our attorney, a gentleman by the name of Jim Windholtz out of Boulder, to go through the bond documents, make sure everything was done correctly. We also authorized an auditor to go in and audit the county's treasurer's records and the assessor's records to make sure that all the payments had been made properly. At the end of December, Mr. Windholtz suddenly passed away while he was attending his sister's funeral in California. After we recovered from that shock, then we began to figure out what we needed to do next. We hired another attorney to give us some advice. He reviewed the documents that Jim Windholtz was going to do and said he thought everything was being done properly and that we should be able to close everything out by the end of this year, except for we'll be collecting money in '09, so we'd have to extend our annual reports to the state through that time. In the meantime, the auditor, looking at the records, found something that he wanted to talk to us about. So he asked Bill LaJoy, who is our vice chair, and me to come to his office, and he told us at that time that EchoStar had been asking for tax abatements, and the tax abatements had been granted. In other words, it reduced their taxes that they were paying. But the authority had not been receiving any reduced payments, and he was concerned about that. So Bill and I met with Tom Bishop, who was our financial advisor, and then we met with Sarah Ann Maxwell from Kutak Rock, who is a financial attorney, and helped set up all the bond documents with these investors already. And she reviewed the law, and she said she thought that the assessor was following the proper assessor regulations and that there should be no changes. So the three of us, Bill LaJoy, Tom Bishop, and I, met with the assessor team at the county building. We went through all of our concerns, laid everything out, and they said, well, we'll get back with you. A few weeks later, they came back and said, no, we're doing everything correct. But there was another appeal filed by EchoStar. And there's a possibility they will appeal in 2008 and in 2009. There's a 3-year lag in that to get anything done to make a final determination on this appeal of their assessments, of their abatements. Therefore, we decided that we might have to pay some money back. We don't really know what that's going to be, so we stopped the trust company from making any payments after June 1st. They're not authorized to make any payments unless we authorize them to do so. So we're sitting on a small bank account waiting to do that, which means that the Series B bondholder did not get his final payment in December. At our meeting we had earlier this month, the authority authorized 2 payments to be made. One, we're going to make a payment to the Series B bondholder of $38,000, and the other is going to be to the city, the Series C bondholder, for $138,000. And that will square us up through December of 2007. And so we still have 2008 that we will deal with as time goes on and we see what's going to happen with all of these abatements. We will continue making our annual report to the state, meeting annually, at least through, it looks like 2012 right now, and we'll just see how it goes. I'd be glad to answer questions. I did this in a short or fast time as I could, but I want to make sure that we get everything answered that you might want to ask.
Questions for Jim? Didn't you say that the term was 25 years for the authority, and that went from the last free authorization, which was 83?
Right.
So that would...
2008 should have been our last year.
Okay.
But because we have to stay in effect as long as we've got money and have to make reports to the state, the authority will stay around.
So the fact that you have money in a bank account means that you stay around?
That we have to make a report annually to the state.
And you're keeping the money in the bank account in case the abatements...
Comes back and says, unless the city wants to backfill this. Now, if the city wants to say, we'll cover whatever abatements come back to EchoStar in lieu of the authority, that would be different. But we didn't anticipate that would happen.
No, we think that our Series C are more important than the Bs and the As.
I would think so, too. I would think so, too.
So how much money do you guys have in the bank now?
After we make these 2 payments to the city and to the Series B, we've got probably around $350,000.
So if the abatements are denied, then in theory that $350,000 would go to pay off the C Series bonds?
We believe it will.
Okay.
Now, the city has paid, the authority has paid the city a little over $200,000 in the past few years, probably 05 and 06. This came about because when the Series A bonds were defeased, in other words, when we got enough money to pay all the Series A bonds, then the contract that we had with all of these bondholders said, we will start splitting the surplus funds that goes to pay Series B 70-30, with the Series B bondholder getting 70% and the city getting 30%. So in 2005 and 2006, the city got a little over $200,000. They didn't get anything in 07. That's where this $138,000 comes in. So they're getting $138,000 for 07. We will eventually settle up with the city, and we will have to check and see if we still owe the Series B bondholder anything at whatever time that comes about.
Okay. Any other questions for Jim?
Who's on the authority besides you?
Bill LaJoy is vice chair, Dennis Reynolds, LaDonna Jurgensen, Gary Thompson, Dale Flowers, Mike Massey. Did I get 7?
Good group.
Yeah. We only meet once a year. So,
Okay, thank you, Jim.
thank you.
Appreciate it. That brings us to unscheduled public appearances. Unscheduled public appearances is an opportunity for any citizen to come down and express an opinion or ask questions basically about anything. We ask you to limit yourself to 4 minutes and state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Arnell Kimmett. I live at 520 Front Range Road. The homes in my area have large lots. Many of the homeowners have horses, and it's close to a Highline Canal. Many of the people in the area with the horses, especially, they have horse trailers, and I don't have a horse trailer, but I have a auto trailer on my property. I collect antique autos, and I have a few cars in a garage on my property. In the rear of my property, I have a big, large lot area that I park a car trailer on, and it's parked on wooden planks. And I recently received a letter from the code department that said I have to get in compliance and change the way the vehicle is parked. If you go up and down the neighborhood, there are like many trailers all over the area that are not in compliance with what the code department claims to be compliant. So I have talked to the people in the code department and talked to Debbie Brinkman about the problem, and she said to come and address the council. The irony of the situation is now my property happens to have a large circular concrete driveway in front. It would be legal for me to park the trailer and degrade the neighborhood by parking in the front, but I can't park in the back, and nobody's complaining where it's parked. None of my neighbors complain about it. This is strictly the code department. This same scenario happened a few years ago. The code department sent me a letter, and at that time I went before the then city council, and they told me to simply table the matter and forget about it unless I hear from them. And I never heard from anybody from the council. They were all in agreement. There's no harm, no foul. Nobody's complaining about it. And I would like to ask this council to do the same thing.
I'm not sure I remember the exchange exactly the way Mr. Kimmett does. I know this has been a conversation that's been going on for a number of years. Council, what we could do is get a memo to you from Jim Thielen. I think this is an issue that's been going on, and explain to you how the code works. I believe it would. I don't think that the council before said no harm, no foul. I think it would have taken a change, probably an amendment to the code ordinance, but we'll have to go back and search the record, but we can certainly brief you on what these code issues are that have been going on here for a number of years. And then if council wants to direct staff to amend the ordinance, certainly that's something that's within your prerogative.
Jim, do you remember that?
Yes.
I think Rebecca brought it forward a few years ago.
I think she did, and I'm just drawing a blank. I don't remember if Mr. Thielen was here. I don't remember if we sent council a background memo and said, here are the issues. So this, but I do know that this came before a previous council, and is typically, what we do is give council a background memo and give you the pros and cons and explain to you what would have to be done to rectify the situation. And I can't remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago, Mr. Kimmett?
It was in 2003.
Yeah.
It was 5 years ago, and it's the same situation. There's plenty of trailers, horse trailers, camper trailers, you name it, parked up and down that area, that are parked on grassy areas just like mine, and nobody complains to each other about it. So it's ironic that I try to hide it as much as I can, and so does everybody else with their trailer. But it's just something that doesn't seem reasonable to have to put a trailer out in front of your house where it's legal as compared to hiding it in the back somewhere.
We can certainly send council a background memo explaining the circumstances, and then if council wants to, I just don't recall whether a code amendment a change or an ordinance to amend the code was what staff suggested or not.
What's the date on the letter that you're supposed to comply?
That I was supposed to comply by December 1st, and I talked to Debbie, and she said, don't worry about it till I talk to council.
Okay.
As far as that date.
Why don't you send us a memo? We'll look at the memo and figure out what it is that we want to do. You're obviously beyond the date, and nothing's happened so far.
No. I mean, nothing's happened. You're correct.
Yeah, so we'll look at this issue again and figure out what the appropriate way to handle it is.
All right, thank you.
That make sense?
Sure. Mhm.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? All right, that takes us to the consent agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda. Normally we bundle non-controversial items together so they can all be approved at once. The one item on here is a resolution for local review of historic tax credits. Could you read that by title, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton agreeing to act as a reviewing entity for the state income tax credit program for qualifying rehabilitation projects under Colorado House Bill 90-1033 CRS Section 39-22 514 as amended.
What this resolution does is allow us to designate ourselves, I guess, as a certified local government entity. We delegate then the responsibility to the Historic Preservation Board for looking at applications for getting state income tax credits for historic structures. Am I assessing that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, great. A motion? Somebody want to make a motion, please?
I move we approve consent agenda item A.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, which is the resolution for local historic tax credit. Discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That takes us to general business. First item, 9A, is a motion to authorize the purchase of a fire department ambulance.
Council, I think EMS Chief Zigowitz is going to present this item to you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff. Happy holidays to all of you. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve a purchase of a Braun Industries ambulance. Now, as you know from this council communication, it is not the lowest bid, but the committee that spec'd this ambulance out believe it is the lowest and best bid. So I just want to kind of tell you how we came up with that. When our mission changed about 7, going on 8 years now, from no transport to transport, we did a needs assessment on what an ambulance should look like. And we came up with a set of specifications, and over the last 8 years, those specifications have been tweaked to design something that we think is appropriate to use to transport safely our patients to the hospital and back, our medics back and forth to the scene. We formed a committee, and I have a few of those committee members here tonight. I'd like to recognize Lieutenant John Chesick, 30-year veteran here with the fire department, been riding in those ambulances for a long time. Michael Ryan, 12-year veteran, was added to the committee this year, and not present is Lieutenant Ryan Knutson, who is the lieutenant out at Station 15 and rides the ambulance. So the committee has been working to get a good set of specifications, and as it states in here, we have not been happy with the vendor that we've been using. I listed a number of things of why that is. Michael Ryan and I took a trip out and visited 3 ambulance manufacturers because as our mission changed, we found that this industry is not well regulated from the back of the cab back. Now, I did provide you with the KKK specifications number F that talks about what an ambulance should have in an ambulance, but it doesn't talk about how it's actually built behind the walls. And that's what we're talking about here tonight. So we went out and visited 3 manufacturers, and we took hundreds of images to bring back to the committee, and we've tweaked our specifications even more. So we went out to a competitive bid. You can see the 3 bids there, and you can see that Braun is not the lowest bid, but we believe it is the best bid. Now, I have listed a few things on why that is, and I only want to touch on the ones that are probably most important. Though we've got 2 good manufacturers here, MedTech and Braun, but the Braun ambulance does a few things that the MedTech doesn't. First of all, Braun has been building since 1972, and they have a customer return rate, satisfactory customer return rate of about 94%. These people are real innovators in the ambulance industry. They build with quality, they keep safety in mind, they don't cut any corners, they believe in delivering the product that you spec out and servicing that product. And they have local service here in Castle Rock. The Braun ambulance uses a solid state, a solid body construction versus an extrusion construction type ambulance construction. No one else in the industry does that. Now just take a second to explain to you. When the walls meet up and the roof meets the walls, an extrusion is that rounded corner. That is the weakest part of an ambulance. Now Braun did away with extrusions years ago. They use a solid state body construction, and it has no extrusions at all. Now this offers improved strength, safety, and longevity to the ambulance. It reduces the weight, resulting in improved fuel economy, more user space on the inside, and less wear and tear on the chassis. The other thing Braun does that we didn't see any other manufacturer do, on the inside, when they're welding this thing together, they use full body welds, full seam welds, whereas other manufacturers just do tack welds and use some kind of airplane glue or tape there. The disadvantage of full seam welds is that on the outside, everywhere where you weld, you have to grind the body down so it looks nice on the outside. So they take the time and effort to do full seam welds, it adds strength, and then they grind the whole outside body down, which takes a long time. Braun uses a sliding door on the curbside, the Easy Glide sliding door. They're the only ones in the industry that did that. And this eliminates the door swinging out into traffic. It eliminates blind spots as you're walking down the side of the ambulance. And when patients or paramedics are exiting the ambulance, your view is not obscured at all. So we think this type of door really adds to the safety. Braun uses a MasterTech 3D display screen and multiplex wiring system, an electrical system. Now, they label every single wire in that ambulance. So if a mechanic is looking at a wire, he's trying to figure out where it goes, on those wires, it's labeled. So it's easy for them to figure out and find and diagnose electrical problems. Their multiplex control system is programmed to control all the electrical circuitry. The system interlocks the load sharing and management of the electricity in the ambulance and has real-time diagnostic monitoring and feedback. What does that all mean for a mechanic? He plugs a computer into it and it diagnoses itself, basically. So we think that's an added feature here. Braun also provides our mechanics with schematics in a hard copy and on CD, which makes it real easy when they diagnose a problem. They go and pull up the CD, they have the part number, and they're able to contact the manufacturer and have the parts delivered to them. Braun is the only company that we saw that was testing every single box that rolled off their manufacturing floor. And what's required is they test the box to 2.5 times the curb weight. So they load the box down with weight, and then they make sure that the doors are able to open and aren't deflected at all. They're the only manufacturer that we saw doing this. When we asked the other manufacturers about it, they said they simulate that on a computer. So we really feel that this is the best ambulance that we can buy for the money. We think, even though it's not the lowest bid, we think it is the best bid. I know Councilwoman Cole had a question about the 2 different types of chassis that we spec'd out. I just want to quickly touch on that. There surely is advantage to having a heavy-duty chassis versus a light-duty chassis. In the fall of 2007, when we budgeted this money for this purchase in 2008, we thought that that would cover the price of the larger chassis. Well, there's been some price increases over the time, so that's why we didn't bring that forward to you. But there are some advantages of that larger chassis. You've got more payload, you have a larger gross vehicle weight, and it adds additional space on the interior, where if you look at our ambulances, every single compartment is full of stuff. It has a heavy-duty electrical system, and that's where a lot of the problems in ambulance comes, in the electrical system. And it has better braking capacity. We didn't bring that forward to you tonight because we understand that these are tough times. We understand that we have a certain amount of dollars that we spec'd out here, and we wanted to stay within that limit. So in conclusion, after visiting their plant and a number of other plants, we believe that Braun is the best manufacturer that offers the highest quality assurance. They have a wonderful warranty program. We think their construction techniques are better than any other ambulance manufacturer in the market. And they really believe in customer service and servicing the customers. They only build about 6 ambulances per week because they take a lot of time and effort when a lot of these other companies are rolling 16 or 18 of them off the showroom. So tonight I'm here in front of you to ask that you approve a purchase of a Braun ambulance.
Any questions from Mr. Zygowitz?
I have a few.
Yes.
You pointed out that I had asked some questions through city manager. Is there a difference in the life expectancy of the light versus the heavy chassis?
Well, that's let me answer it this way. We have a 5-year plan to replace these ambulances, and then they go into a reserve status for a number of years. We used to be on a Chevy chassis. That Chevy chassis has been in reserve status, and we actually had to go back and add leaf springs to it because the ride was so uncomfortable. The heavy-duty and light-duty chassis really comes down to the gross vehicle weight. And our ambulances, I have here, all weighed in 2007, somewhere near 12,500 pounds. In the light-duty chassis, you get anywhere from 13,000 pounds to 16,000 pounds. We're pushing that limit right now as we continue to add things like the Auto Pulse, 65 pounds. So as the mission changes, we continue to add things. The advantage of the heavier duty chassis, you get 20,000 pounds of gross vehicle weight. So I guess I would tell you that in the 5 years we use them and in the number of years we have in reserve, maybe there isn't a real advantage. We think...
Can I ask then, if we got something that was better, might we, at least for that one, use it more than 5 years before we put it into the reserve group?
I think we could do that. We've never done that in the past.
I mean, part of the reason I'm asking, you named about 3 things in particular that were better with the heavy duty, including the braking and the electrical system, which you said is one of the biggest problems, potential problems.
Sure.
So
I guess I would say our current plan for replacing these is every 5 years, and if you said tonight we're going to give you a heavier chassis, I don't have any data that's going to tell you that it's going to run longer. I can't particularly prove that to you tonight.
I mean, what I'm looking at is long-term effectiveness and also the greater safety features for the crew and the people that you transport. I don't know, since we haven't discussed this, whether or not we think we could squeeze some money out, particularly if we could even extend for 1 year, go to 6 years on this before it got moved over. That would... what are we looking at? Even with 171,000, we're looking at what? Over $30,000 a year, right? If you costed it out, over $35,000 a year. So to spend about $20,000 more and get an extra year out of it potentially, But you don't know, you don't have any figures on life expectancy from the company or other people that have used those?
I surely can't promise you anything tonight that would back up that thought.
Any other questions, Jim?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question Peggy did, but I'm assuming, Peggy, that if the chief felt that there was an extra $20,000 in his 08 budget, he would have let Wayne know that he could make that kind of statement to us if it was available. So I'm assuming that that's not there. But Wayne, I do have two questions. I'm going to kind of roll them all into one. If this company is so great, number one, why have we not had them in the past? And McCoy Miller has been our low bid in the past, and this time they turn out to be the highest bid. How comfortable are you in that the bids weren't artificially low for the two bids that were lower than McCoy Miller in order to get the contract, and then they subsequently would be higher?
Well, I surely don't have any proof of that was particularly the case. I will tell you that we've used them for a number of years, and I've listed a number of problems that we have seen on a continual basis.
You're talking about McCoy Miller?
Yes.
Yes.
After we had a problem with picking two rigs up in the same year, we were so unhappy they flew a guy out here from Indiana. He outlined everything that was the problem with those two rigs. When we went out last year to pick the rig up, we used his punch list and started down it, and the same problems that we had with picking those two rigs up. Even though he talked to us about what our unhappiness was, they still were in the rig that we were picking up. So we're not happy with this manufacturer, and because of that, these units go out of service on a regular basis to take care of issues that are issues of quality control. And that's really not a good position for our people to be in, to be going in and out of these rigs. As an example, a compressor was mounted in a place that it wasn't supposed to be mounted, right behind the driver with no sound deadening. And for our people and for our patients, it was deafening in the back to listen to that. It was never spec'd out to be mounted there, and it was mounted there. So we feel that this manufacturer is not one that we want to continue to use.
Further questions?
I'd still go back to my issue, and I don't know that we can answer this tonight, but we've got a few people here involved with budget. I mean, you know, what money is where and so forth. I really would like to know either that there's no hope that we could find some more money, or that maybe delaying this till our next meeting to look into that. Jim, could you respond to that?
Dr. Cole, I would say, I talked about this with Chief Mullen and Chief Zigowitz. Certainly, we could always find $20,000. I think the key point, the exchange between you and Chief Zigowitz, you were asking whether or not we could say with any degree of certainty that we were going to get extra cost benefit out of the heavy-duty chassis. And that quantitative data does not exist.
Okay.
And I think certainly for the directions that we gave to all of the departments to try to be as economical as possible, the Chief Mullen, Chief Zigowitz have said the light-duty chassis is a very serviceable chassis for the 5 years that we plan for them. It's going to be serviceable. Intuitively, we feel like the heavy-duty chassis may give longer wear, but there's a couple of agencies, West Metro, which is one of our sister agencies, we understand has actually purchased in their last go-around both a light-duty and a heavy-duty chassis, and they are kind of running a pilot project to compare them. Another sister agency, Castle Rock, has run heavy-duty chassis for quite a number of years, but they also have had a much longer transport commute time. So right now, we can't get apples to apples, and I think that's what we're saying to you.
No, all I'm looking for was
ma'am.
advice when somebody that has a larger has more experience in interpreting this than I do.
And it may be things happen in the manufacturing industry where Chief Zigowitz talked about the issues with the McCoy Millers, which was a Chevy chassis. This vehicle is with a Ford chassis. Obviously, there are things going on in manufacturing. We may come back to you, and Chief Mullen may want to comment on this, but by the time we get to another replacement vehicle, there may be a sufficient amount of hard data that we could come to you and say, for the additional cost of the heavy-duty chassis, we would expect to get either lower maintenance costs over the 5 years or extended life. But we just have to be very candid with you tonight. We could not offer that assurances or say that that would happen. So that's why the chief and I have agreed with that, have stayed with the budget recommendation.
Is it possible with this one, I mean, I'm not looking definitive here, but is it possible that the lightweight one, the lighter weight one, might last more than 5 years, that we might discover more with that? I mean, based on our experience and the sister cities?
Well, I guess what I would say to you is that don't think of it as just 5 years, because we use those in a reserve status for a number of years following that, and they're used on a regular basis. So they get more than 5 years life.
No, and I appreciated that.
Yes.
I just thought, you know, might get 6 out of it before it went into the rotation or the backup use. Anyway, but thank you for your explanation of all that.
Yes, ma'am.
If I remember correctly, and that's a big if, the discussion for this when it was in the 2008 budget, this medic unit that we're replacing has something like 65,000 miles on it. And when I asked Alan Brown why we were replacing it, he said it was because the engine had a lot more hours on it than that would indicate from 65,000 miles. So the driving factor on replacing this one is engine, not chassis. But one of the things you didn't point out, and I think we ought to for the audience, is the low bid is $171,000. The high bid is 170, or the one that you want is 173,000. We're talking less than $2,100 on a $171,000 purchase. The reason why this is in front of us is because I believe our charter requires us to go with the lowest bid. Otherwise, it has to come to council for approval with some reasoning on why we're not going to the lowest bid. You've heard that presentation. Any further questions from Mr. Zigowitz? John?
Yeah, just one comment for future use. You mentioned a lot of items here that makes this a superior ambulance to the others. Why weren't any of those in the bid specs? I mean, if you want thicker aluminum or solid body construction, put that in the bid. And then you don't have this problem. You got everybody bidding the same product. And if this is the only one that makes that product, then they'll get the bid. But I think if you want MasterTech 3 display screens, put it in the bid. My whole thing.
And I will tell you, sir, that we've had those discussions since these bids came back. I guess we were under the impression that we shouldn't have a bid spec package that is so tight, because no other ambulance manufacturers use a solid state body construction. So by using that in a bid spec, that eliminates everybody but one manufacturer. So I guess it was our impression that we shouldn't do that.
That's my fear, is if you do spec it down so far, you're going to be a single source, and then the next bid you'll get will be.
Yeah, and let me just add to that Mayor Clark is exactly the dilemma. And John, I understand where you're coming from, but the science, if you will, and the engineering of these units are much more complicated than, I'll just give you an example. When we were going out for new police vehicles, some of the troops wanted to stay with the Chevy Tahoes, others like the Crown Victorias. And so what we did, we actually bought, if you remember, you approved some of both. And we had actually, we're kind of doing an experiment where some of the officers are driving Crown Vics and the others are driving the Chevy Tahoes. That's actually given us our own little comparative. But obviously, we can't sort of have a number of $175,000 medic vehicles to kind of test them out and see how they're running. So it is that fine balance between not getting so specific that it's a sole source, and you're saying really there's only one who can meet it, but yet, you know, leaving it open enough to try to get some of these things. But it's a gray area we're having to kind of find a balance between. So I know exactly where you're coming from, John. We'll be working with fire department to just make sure we have some fairness in that process.
Yeah, I mean, my personal take on this is we're better off having 3 different companies bid, because then they know they're competing with each other. And if there are substantial items that cause us to want to have one over the other, especially for a $2,000 difference, then this is the right procedure to do.
And I think that's also right on. If the dollar amount were a much wider spread, I think we'd be having a different discussion.
Yeah, but for $2,000 out of 171. Any further discussion, questions? Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that the ambulance bid of $173,577 submitted by Braun Industries be approved.
Second.
I guess the second goes to Debbie. It's been moved and seconded to approve the ambulance bid for $173,000. Any discussion? Council, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. That takes us to item 9B, which is a discussion on Main Street intersections.
Yes, sir. Charlie Bloston, the Public Services Director, will present this item to you.
Good evening, Council. Last month at a study session, you gave staff direction to rebuild Main Street from Court Place west to Rapp Street. We intend to remove approximately 3 inches of asphalt, replace it with a new polymer asphalt that is harder, quieter, and will last longer. We design our streets for at least a 20-year life expectancy. At that time, there was discussion originally initiated by Councilman Taylor several months ago to do some stylized, a word that I created here at this point, intersections at Prince Street, Curtis, Nevada, and possibly Sycamore, where there's a pedestrian crossing for the RTD commuters. If you wish to pursue that, we're going to use some alternatives in the council communication and some photographs that I can also display on the screen. That if you wish for staff to go ahead and do this, we'll have to talk about money, inconvenience during construction, and which alternative you wish to select. With that, I'll answer any questions because we have given you the options, and leave it to council to decide what you want to do at this point. We would like to bid the project no later than February, because council at the study session indicated you want it built in May. Assuming that we get reasonable weather, we will be able to complete all the work in May, but if we have to do different type of intersections, we either go beyond May or we have to go through some construction idiosyncrasies that will create disruption to Main Street traffic.
Yep.
First of all, thanks, Charlie, for waiting till I got back to talk about the intersections, because it's very near and dear, of course, to my heart. When will the street light go in at Curtis and Main?
We're designing it right now. We're using a contract consultant to design it, a gentleman who used to work with us, Mr. Fessler. He anticipates the design will be completed in January. It takes approximately 6 months to order the materials and build the signal at that point. So approximately summertime 2009.
I hope before Western Welcome Week. I would much prefer that we look at brick in these intersections, because I think it's more in the keeping with the historic area. Main Street is historic. The streets in the past were all brick. So bringing back the brick at the intersections, I think, will help slow down traffic. as we get more and more pedestrians walking across from one side of the street to the other in the downtown area, I think we need to slow down the traffic as much as we can. Brick at those intersections will have that tendency to do that. I also like what Greenwood Village or Grant Ranch did. They used the large blocks, not the patterned concrete, but they used actually large blocks that are set in just like a brick is, I believe, particularly in Grant Ranch. And I thought if you did Curtis in Nevada before you did anything else, but you can't do Curtis till you get the light put in, I'm assuming.
That's correct. And I'll mention one other point, Councilman Taylor, that if we do concrete or pavers in the intersection, we will have to remove the trolley tracks at that location. With the asphalt removal and replacement we're doing, we can leave the trolley tracks in place. Because we go down so deep with concrete in preparation for whatever paving material would be at the intersections, that intersection, we would have to remove the trolley tracks. It would delay the project. And just another conflict that I want council to be aware of, so that if you decide to do brick pavers, as Jim is suggesting, it will cause those kind of conflicts as we try and build it.
But those railroad tracks can be cut with a cutting torch. So
that's correct.
That's not an insurmountable obstacle.
No, it can be done.
But if we get at least Nevada Street done, then we'd have an alternative for east-west and north-south for closing down Prince Street. And I understand about the inconvenience it's going to do to close the street. But the long-term, I think, beautification and the long-term benefit that I believe the merchants will eventually get out of this would be worth a little inconvenience in order to get it done. That is my opinion, of course. But I certainly would urge us to go with a brick or a large block intersection, maybe with brick trim or something that would really enhance these intersections in the downtown area.
If I may, Mayor, can I show some pictures on the screen for those who might be watching on television or the audience?
Please.
If we could do that. This is the intersection of Colorado Boulevard and Louisiana in Denver. This is an application on top of the asphalt pavement. It takes very little time to install. It actually is a little brighter than the photograph shows, but it stands out specifically for crosswalk treatment.
How does it wear?
It's been there 9 months, and at this point we saw it looked like it was brand new. And we feel confident that this could be a product that if you want to do it, it will make the intersection stand out. We were pretty impressed with this product when we went out to see it.
While you have that one there, because you're going to show something else in a minute, can you combine that with that little look design that's on another one? I mean, can you put the look design with that? Can it be done?
Like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We get a large number of visually impaired people walking in the downtown streets.
And you'd only want the arrow going one way.
Yeah.
No, that's to look both directions for pedestrians crossing, I think, Doug. Isn't that what that is? The look is to look both sides of the street for pedestrians coming across.
But it's a one-way street. I mean, that's for the pedestrians to look, I think.
I would point out to you the number of vehicles that actually travel the wrong way on Main Street
Yes,
at night is astounding.
Well, then maybe you want both arrows.
You may want. Let me point out to you that this is a series, this diagram at the top shows various crosswalk alternatives. The one at the very top, this one here, is what we currently use on Main Street and Prince. But these are two other designs for crosswalks that are shown in the manual for uniform traffic control devices that are acceptable. This is the design they suggest for an intersection like Prince Street where you can cross diagonally. And again, this is just pavement tape. It lasts about 5 to 6 years, and we use it right now on Main Street. This is a concrete block. You can see that it's been scored. It has a little bit of damage. This has been used in several other cities. It has to take approximately 1 week to do 1/4 of the intersection. It would be pretty inconvenient, but again, it would last anywhere between 30 and 50 years.
Charlie, what's the noise impact with the concrete? Is it louder than the street?
Yes, concrete is louder than asphalt. Mineral Avenue is the best example of that.
But that also depends on speed too, Debbie. The faster you go, the more noise you get out of it. So if you're 20 miles an hour speed limit on Main Street, you wouldn't have that much noise.
Here's again in the upper left is in Greenwood Village, as Jim suggested, the concrete block. And you can see how it looks. Remembering, and this picture is important because we do have a lot of trees on Main Street and how the shadowing effect looks for this. And again, you have, this is the handicap ramp for visually impaired that we just finished installing on Main Street. All of the concrete work on Main Street is 100% complete. So in 2009, whatever work we do will be actually in the street and not on the sidewalk or the curb and gutter area. This is a paver, a brick paver. And you can see even the different colors here. One probably is newer. This is pretty impressive. It has extensive amount of use at this location. We determined it was somewhere between 5 and 10 years, and it looks pretty good. As you can see, there's very little damage.
Council, let me just point out, when Charlie says this is impressive, we're not lobbying for any of these alternatives.
That's absolutely correct. I'm not suggesting one, but if you decide to do it, it can work. The key to this is underneath it is concrete. Concrete that goes at least 6 inches deep.
Charlie, on that, do you have to have the concrete edge to those, or can you?
No, you need that, John. You need that concrete edge, just like on this one. Here it is again. Here they're using a wider mortar, and again with the look statement there suggested, you need that concrete edge. To put bricks in there to hold them tight, asphalt will not work.
And how deep are the phantom rails?
Say again?
How deep are the phantom rails?
The rails are approximately 6 to 8 inches deep in the ground, yes. And they are there. There's a sample of it in my office. Those are the, I could go through a lot of other pictures, Council. Mr. Taylor was not here at the time. We do have photographs like this, where you can use color. To be honest with you, that we think the color might fade. It wears off. We're concerned about damage done by snowplows. We do use metal bits on our snowplow in order to get better ice gripping on it. As you can see there, it looks attractive. Again, if you got a lot of pedestrian movement and not a lot of truck traffic, that could work very well. As Mr. Woods pointed out, let me tell you, we are not necessarily recommending any alternative. Whichever way council decides, we will assign the budget for it and then say we can build it and be glad to move forward with it.
Would you address snow plowing and if it were brick? Would that interfere as badly as you just indicated in the previous picture?
Yeah, let me see if I can find one. Here we go. Now, I'm not sure this was done because of a snowplow, but if those brick pavers become dislodged and rise up, I can assure you a snowplow will rip those right out. And we may be replacing them in the winter. Steve Alexander, our street superintendent, shivered when he saw these kind of brick pavers when they were raised up. When you get to a brick paver like this, that's very well flat and sitting on top of concrete and put in one at a time solid, he felt very comfortable with it. And so, Jim, in answer to your question, if it's installed absolutely perfect, we feel our snowplows will not damage it. If it's looks like that, we will pull that out of the ground. This location here and here, our snowplows will damage it.
How long does it, would it take then to do the brick on the cement, the concrete?
Something like that.
Yeah.
At the corner of Prince and Main, it might take up to 2 weeks, and then we would have other locations at Curtis and Nevada if you wish to do it, and a fourth pedestrian crossing at Sycamore. I'm giving those 4. You don't have to do all 4. If you want to do just Prince and Main, it could be done that way, and we could probably complete just the intersection in 2 weeks. We can do it a quarter at a time. It would take longer, might take up to a month at that point, and we would have to close streets in each direction. We would be able to leave maybe 1 lane open. I talked to the people in Golden that did it, and it was extremely disruptive. They actually closed down the street and forced traffic to a neighboring street. It's on Washington, and I don't know what the next street over is, which is Washington is their main street. And they are the ones that did the installation, such as you see here, where it was done so well that in the 5 to 10 years it's been there, they've had no damage. But you know, I spent a lot of time talking to them how it was installed and making sure that they had that level of perfection to make it smooth. It is very critical. Can we get that in Littleton? We would sure try if council gave us that direction to do so.
Did you talk to them about how much it would cost?
Oh yeah, this is easily $250,000 to do all in downtown.
To do the 4?
Oh yes, easily $250,000.
And you're talking about north, south, east, west?
Yes. Yeah, this is an intersection. You can see the lines are there. And we saw people, while we were there, we probably stayed in Golden a good hour watching people cross and asking them questions about the look symbol. And that looks pretty good. That's been there a long time. And you notice they put a little style in it. It was kind of cleverly done. We hadn't seen that anywhere else. That was the only place in all of our visits that we saw that.
Charlie, if I remember right, we paved Main Street about 10 years ago. Because we did that at the same time we widened the sidewalks. We
did some widening of the sidewalks. We actually didn't pave the whole street, Doug. We matched to the new curb and gutter. I remember doing that because the street or the sidewalks were narrower, and to smooth out more, we had to put in a little more of a curve or slope to get it to the new curb and gutter.
Well, my memory, which may be bad because I'm getting old, was that the impetus for looking at the sidewalks was that we were redoing Main Street altogether. And we ended up hiring Joe Gibb, the consultant that came in. He's the one that suggested the 16 feet. Somehow that's the magical width for the sidewalks. But one of the things that Mr. Gibbs recommended was not doing fancy pavers. Now, he was talking sidewalks rather than streets, but his contention was that they went out of style before you ever got them paid off. And what he used as an example was Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills that has just plain old concrete on it. So part of the concern is if we're actually redoing Main Street once every 10 years, and the reason I bring up the phantom rails is I seem to remember that was the reason why we weren't going all the way down 10 years ago on Main Street.
It was one of the reasons.
One of the reasons. So
let me point out one to you, as you mentioned it, Mayor. This is a style that we felt would become obsolete and would get old. And we looked at that and said, you might tire of that.
It's not very historic either.
No, not at all. Again, we looked at everything. We drove all over. We found the brick pavers, the concrete blocks. We found that first one I showed you on Colorado Boulevard, and even this kind of design that we kind of all stood back and said, whoa, that stands out for a pedestrian walkway. Whatever council decides, we can figure out how to do it.
Could you show me again the one that exists today?
Yes.
Charlie has too many pictures, Tom.
Yeah. Bear with me a minute here.
Even got himself in the picture a couple times.
What we have today on Main Street are these two parallel lines. And again, the manual for traffic control says you can do any of these three. And if you wish to do one where Prince and Main allows diagonal pedestrian crossing with no conflicting traffic, this is what they recommend, which we do not have on Main Street right now. We just have the 4 crosswalks. We don't show any diagonal, but the walk lights are at a diagonal, and then you get that chirping sound and traffic stops in all 4 directions. That only exists at Prince. We don't do that at Nevada and Curtis.
How much additional is that?
This is nothing. This is built into the budget already.
Yeah. In this economy, I like the one with no additional.
Could that one be combined with that, is it tire grip?
Yes. The answer to your question is yes. Tire grip is, it comes in.
And the tire grip for the whole thing would be about $30,000?
Say again?
The tire grip for all the various intersections that
would be
$30,000.
$30,000.
About $30,000.
This is no additional cost. If you want to do the tire grip, was what I showed you on Colorado Boulevard, was $30,000 to do all the intersections in downtown Littleton. If you want to combine it with this, it's still the same $30,000. Mm-hmm.
Charlie, on the tire grip, do you have any information on whether that is a better surface to walk across in wet or, snowy weather? Because I know sometimes that white tape, it can get a little slick. So would this have any sort of a resistance to, provide a better walking surface or not?
I will give you the statement from their flyer. Tire grip is resistant to oil, petrol, and de-icing salts and has excellent adhesion to existing road surfaces. It is quick to apply, curing under 3 hours at an ambient temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and can be used on all classes of roads. They go on to indicate that it does work in all types of weather. In talking to the city of Denver, which did the one in Colorado Boulevard, they had not experienced a winter with that tire grip yet. So I don't have direct experience. I'm just reading from the brochure. They installed it in 2008, and they haven't had an winter experience on it. And I haven't been out there yet in the last month to look at it.
I was out there last week and noticed it. And we had just gotten a storm and didn't look anything special, but didn't see anybody walking across the street, but it had been plowed and it hadn't gotten torn up from the plows, or it was still all intact.
So I think you just said the magic words right there. It didn't look anything special. And I think we need to make downtown special.
Well, that's not what I meant.
That could be interpreted, Debbie.
Okay. Somebody want to get a motion going so that we can arrive at a decision here?
Can I make some comments to
Sure.
council before we get started here?
Sure.
I haven't been on Main Street since '66. I've seen the streets tore up quite a few times. The last one was for the storm drain down the middle of the street. That took 4 years, 1 block at a time. And that was that was probably during the time that they had went ahead and kind of repaved it a little bit, trying to get it up to speed. But my basic thought is that the merchants on Main Street just want to get that street paved. It is lumpy and bumpy. Old people can fall down easy. Young people can fall down easy because your footing isn't straight. as far as putting any additional pavers, et cetera, for a very pricey $300,000, I just said we put down the rubber that the city puts down around. Is that what it's called? That rubber, white rubber?
That's a thermoplastic pavement marking.
Yeah, thermoplastic. That seems to me we've only got, I think, 2 lanes of traffic going through downtown. And I can't see going into something that's going to disrupt the businesses down there. This year especially, I think that all the merchants want to see this done and over. And some that's, I talked, Charlie has been talking to take 3 weeks. And some of them said, if it's going to take more than 3 weeks, I won't make it. And that's their feeling on some of them. So we want to, as far as I'm concerned, just get in and get it paved. Forget about all the pricey stuff because it's just going to cost us an extra $300,000 or more. We don't know. So that's my feelings. And I've talked to a lot of the merchants down there.
I'll toss out a motion, at least I'll try. I move that we select the tire grip. This is complicated. Tire grip with the diagonal pattern at Prince and Main and the pattern that's shown in photo A for the others. And also incorporate, not for Prince and Main, but for the, well, maybe if it can be done, but at least for the others, the look piece, to have a little fun and alert people.
Okay, it's been moved to install tire grip with the diagonal pattern at Prince and Main. The other patterns at the other intersections with the addition of the look symbology at the other intersections. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay.
Are you also including the pedestrian crosswalk at Sycamore for RTD, light rail?
Well, I'm including whatever Charlie said that we're going to be, that we were looking at for these.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to install tire grip with diagonal patterns at Prince and Main with the other patterns at the other intersections as shown in the photograph with the look symbology at the other intersections. Discussion. Jim?
Yes, I'm going to vote against this motion because I think this is our one opportunity to really do something to enhance the look of downtown. And it will, in the long run, make it appear more historic, and we will, I think, eventually have merchants that will benefit from it being a more historic look.
Okay, further discussion? John?
Yeah, I'm going to vote against it too because I don't want to enhance downtown right now. I don't want to hurt their business, and I think we should just go to the no additional costs and keep going as the way we were.
John, did you want to do anything? Say anything?
Yeah, I like the idea of tire grip. I've seen it several times on Colorado Boulevard. You notice it, it gets your attention if you're a driver, and I think as a pedestrian it probably is beneficial also. I don't know, having seen that on Colorado, if the diagonal figure 3B17 is going to look that good with tire grip. And that's the only thing that concerns me about your motion is doing that diagonal at Prince. I think it's going to be way too busy, and I just can't see it there at this time. But so I guess I'd like to offer an amendment that at the corner of Prince and Main, we not do the diagonal, but go ahead and do the standard crosswalk markings with tire grip at that intersection.
Okay, it's been moved to amend the main motion to remove the diagonal pattern from Prince and Main. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the main motion to remove the diagonal pattern at Prince and Main. Discussion on the amendment. Yes vote would remove the diagonal pattern. A no vote would leave it in. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Taylor and Councilman Mulvey voting no. The amendment's approved.
Okay, now we're back to the main motion, the amended main motion.
How was that 6 in favor with 2 people voting no?
I'm sorry, 5 in favor.
Okay. Then I do have a question for Charlie, if I could. How much difference in time would it be to do what the motion is versus just as it is right now? I think that's what Councilman Mulvey was wanting.
To install the tire grip according to the amendment can be done, I believe it's in 3 hours at each intersection.
So it's not going to really tie up the merchants significantly more to do that versus just fairly plain?
What I would suggest, council, is if you decide to pursue that, we would do it on a Sunday.
Okay, further discussion. Deb?
I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think that at this time, a couple of things are of great consideration. One is the cost. While I agree that brick pavers do add an ambiance to an environment, and I think that downtown Littleton is perfect for that type of an application, I think that at this time the cost is just not something that I feel comfortable with approving, when I think there's some other factors that we need to keep consideration of in the budget. And the other thing is the time that it'd take to do that, and what that would cost in business to the retail merchants down there. It's a tough economy as it is, and most of this work is going to be done during what I would consider some precarious weather. It's springtime, and so you're going to have some things dealing with that. So I also believe that we need to, one of our larger considerations on doing something like this, there's a lot of talk about sidewalks, but one of the things I think about a lot on that is the safety issue. And I think the more people that are milling around downtown, and the kids, and I've seen a lot more people down there walking with their dogs. I've seen a lot more bikes lately. And I think the more activity that gets going down there, and particularly when you get into the warmer weather, it is becoming more and more important that those walks are very well distinguished for all traffic and for the pedestrians, and that people, I think they help keep people within that walking area too, which adds to safety. And this particular treatment is it's obvious enough that I think it will prove an additional safety feature for us too. So I'm going to support this amendment, although I don't really like that look thing on there.
Further discussion? John?
Yeah, just, I really am concerned that doing something such as brick pavers, however you do it, they aren't going to last. The pictures that Charlie had, the concrete either gives away or the bricks do. Anytime you have that many seams in a street, you're going to have problems with it. And, yeah, it may look historic, but, there's a reason they still don't make streets out of brick. And that is because they didn't last. And I think the thing with the bricks, especially the kind of commercial traffic we have on Main Street, they're just going to tear it up. And if they don't, snowplows will. So I really can't see spending that much money to go with something like brick pavers or trying to make it more historic, I just don't think it'll last.
So I'm going to support the motion.
Further discussion? I'm a man, so I have no fashion sense, as my wife was pointing out on my way down here. But I think the tire grip will look awful downtown. And with the bump outs, we already have bump outs at the intersections. The distance to cross from one bump out to the next is probably less than it takes for me to cross on my street on Houston Waring. And the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. I think we're better off with just having the regular stripes on the pavement. Council, ready to vote? This is the main motion.
Is that the clarification of that now?
Pardon? I will, yes. The main motion is tire grip at all intersections with regular patterns, not the diagonal patterns, and with the look symbology at all intersections except Main Street. A yes vote is for the tire grip, and no vote is not.
I'll try to get my math right this time. 4 in favor of the motion, with Councilman Taylor, Councilman Mulvey, and Councilman Clark voting no. The motion's approved for the tire grip.
Okay, we have tire grippy intersections coming. That brings us to item 9C, which is a discussion of the downtown parking study, or downtown parking study strategy.
Our acting community development director, Dennis Swain, will start this off, and Charlie worked on this with Dennis also.
During
Dennis?
the budget discussions, we had direction from City Council to move forward with a parking study fairly early in the planning process for the downtown. And so we've been looking at different parking programs that have been done, parking studies have been done. Charlie, as you know, has done an inventory of parking in the downtown, so we really feel like it's time to move beyond that and look at what our future solutions are, and look at both short-term and long-term solutions for both the management of the parking as well as location and financing for parking needs in the future, and in addition to looking at the zoning requirements for parking. So a fairly complex set. We've talked to a consultant. I did include a proposal from that consultant. We wanted to make sure that we're on the right track with what Council's looking for before we proceed with going further with the consulting contract. I think the key things to look at are that second set of the key questions. What are the parking demands created by projected land uses downtown? So looking at what are the land uses that we anticipate, at what point do we actually anticipate getting a trigger for determining when we need additional parking? What's the appropriate location for that parking? What's the configuration? How do we manage parking in the meantime? And then what are the projected costs of providing alternatives? So looking at different ways to provide that. If we don't look at just parking, but other ways to actually meet those needs, what might those be and what would be the cost be? And what changes to the current zoning code or ordinances would need to be made to implement the scenario. So those are the kind of key questions we've been thinking about, again, in terms of moving beyond the inventory itself and saying, actually, how do we proceed with actually looking at what the future needs are for parking in the downtown itself. Carlos Hernandez, who is with consulting firm, is here as well. Charlie and I are certainly welcomed and open to any questions that you might have, clarification of where we are. But mostly we want to make sure we're just on the right track and that we are covering the concerns that you have for parking in the downtown.
Questions for Mr. Jim?
Dennis, in reading through all the information you supplied about what they're going to do, there were a couple of things that seemed to stand out to me that we probably need to, that I would be very interested in having information on. One is perhaps even a mail survey, I don't care, but something that's going to go to the residential houses of north of Maine to survey them, and also east of the railroad tracks to at least Spotswood, maybe from Powers to Lake, somewhere in there, finding out about parking problems in those areas as well. And then I'd also like a survey of the shops and businesses and maybe even the residential areas that you're doing in the first question about where they currently park. I think that would be important to know where the shop owners now park. And if there is a problem and we need to change parking habits, we need to know what the problems are before we start.
Okay, good. The first one I don't think we've really discussed, but I think it's a great idea. The second one is included in the proposal that we got from Carlos when he's actually talking about going out and meeting with individual property owners, individual store owners, and talking to people one-on-one and really getting a sense of what are the issues, also getting some sense of ownership of what the results might be so they really get to participate in this process from the very beginning. And that would be one of the questions is, what are the issues you see and where are you parking now? What do you, so what actually is functioning? So we actually go through into a pretty complete analysis of how parking is functioning at this current time.
See, I didn't gather all of that in reading that. I gathered what I interpreted from that is parking in general, not where the shop owners and their employees are parking, but if you think that's included, that's
If it's not clear, we certainly can make sure that's clear.
It wasn't clear to me.
Okay.
Doug?
Dennis, I don't know if you can answer these questions or if someone else here can. Can you tell me how many past studies we've done on parking?
Carl, you want to add to that? I am aware of 2 that we've done specifically in the last 10 years or so that deal with parking in the downtown, specifically for the entire downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had an analysis done of potential parking structures and locations for those, as well as the cost of putting a bridge across the railroad tracks. I know it was another analysis that was done when we looked at parking on the east side. Charlie, in addition?
At one point in the 1970s, I think it was 76, there was a group of residents who did a central area action plan that also included a planning or a parking study at that time. So it dates back 30 years, if not more, and a whole lot of different parking studies.
Charlie, just to answer Debbie's question, I know Carl Walker has come in. Just maybe in a 10-year window, what would you guess? Maybe
in 10 years?
Had them in.
There have probably been 2 or 3 parking studies, but we also did the pedestrian bridge study across the railroad tracks, and we did the study of the floodplain issue for parking on the east side of the railroad.
So a fair guess, Debbie, is probably 3 within the last 10 years.
And 3 plus some other
specialized
related.
But those were all actually for almost very different parking issues. And that's, if I had to critique the methodology, I think you've got step 1 and step 2 backwards. I think what you have to do first is figure out what your parking needs are based on what potential development is, and then go talk to the stakeholders. Okay. Because otherwise, that becomes a repeat of the parking study that we've done. Because what we've done on parking studies is gone and look at what's our inventory of spaces that we have, how utilized are those spaces, how many open spaces there are for the existing development that's downtown. The issue that's facing us is we have parking requirements in the zoning code that are triggered by different events, and one of the triggers is a PDO, which is triggered by, I believe, 500 square feet if you do a renovation that's 500 square feet or larger. So a 500 square foot renovation triggers a PDO, which then triggers requirement to meet parking requirements, and then you get in the situation of murals where they have to, by parking regulations, supply 90 parking places, and there isn't any place right now readily available to go out and get a 90-space parking place. So this is different than the other studies we've done. We looked at the bridge across the railroad tracks in response to RTD parking issues. We also hired Sato, I think, to go and look at doing a structure at the northeast corner of ACC,
yes,
which they declined to participate in. And those were all done to look at what RTD was going to do to the parking downtown. What we have here is parking regulations that, as they sit right now, are restricting what can be done to the businesses downtown or what can be done to development to the businesses downtown. So this is a study that's different than the others because this is a study to try and ascertain what's the magnitude of the problem, how many parking places are we talking total, and then where would you get those parking places, how much would those alternatives cost, and then what are the possible solutions for providing that, which ranges all the way from the city doing it to a business improvement district to something else. So And I think that sometimes looking out in, it's easy to confuse this with the previous stuff. But that's why I don't think there's any point in doing the first step of this, because we already know what our inventory is. We already know that, some business owners park where they shouldn't. What we're really looking at is what do we need to do? Should we change our zoning regulations, our parking requirements? If not, then where do we go get the parking places? That's what this study is oriented towards, I believe. And one of the solutions may be, if it turns out that we need 500 spaces for downtown to handle impending development, then it's where do you go get 500 places? And that may be on the floodplain, across the tracks. That may be a parking structure someplace. That may be buying Rinky's place and doing something there. I mean, there's a whole range of alternatives after you figure out what the size of the problem is.
I think it's also looking at, is there a different management structure we could put in place where we could manage the existing parking more efficiently? Yeah. And how do we look long-term? So it's looking both those short-term solutions as well as the long-term solutions. Yeah.
And I think, Charlie, I heard Charlie's presentation that there's 800 and some odd parking places if you include RTD. Perhaps that is sufficient to do this, but then I think it gets in a question of talking to the merchants and the owners about what the impacts to them are going to be if we do that, if that's the method that we use. Jose.
If I could go back a little bit here, I have to read this somewhat. We have a problem with anything they want to do here on the parking, and it doesn't fall with what's within a special improvement district or what the codes wanted to say to you. But I'm going to just read 2 paragraphs here. The Central Area Task Force, this was in June 8, 1977, Central Area Special Improvement District for Public Parking. The Central Area Task Force, composed of downtown merchants, realtors, and property owners, has been charged with working out techniques to accomplish the plan recommendations of the Central Area Policy Plan. One of the serious problems identified in that plan was the lack of and haphazard occurrence of off-street parking to serve Main Street businesses. The task force members felt that this was a problem which deserved immediate attention and focused its activities on developing an off-street parking program that could be implemented on a fairly short-term basis. Based on the existing floor space in the downtown core area along Main Street and national recommended parking standards, there is an existing deficit of about 520 parking spaces downtown. The task force explored a number of alternatives for providing more spaces and by means by which this could be accomplished. Some of the criteria for evaluating the alternatives included distribution of the parking throughout the downtown area, sufficient size to provide substantial number of spaces in an attractive, well-organized, and easily identifiable lot, and inequity assessing costs in relation to the benefits. Okay, and the way they came about this, based on these assumptions, the most equitable assessment formula seemed to be that 50% of the project could be based on the percentage of business floor area, 50% on parking deficit. Thus, every business within a special improvement district would be assessed for its share of total floor area, and if it does not provide the required number of off-street parking spaces, on its share of the parking deficit. Business which do provide adequate off-street parking will not be assessed for parking deficit share. Now that's all in good here, but then you come along here and we have the historical downtown district that says reduce parking requirements within the downtown historic district. In existing buildings, there will be no additional parking spaces required for change of use and 50% reduction for new additions. So you're throwing 50% of it right out the door. There you are. Where are you going to go from here?
Well, that's a very good point, and we are meeting, or the Historic Preservation Board is doing a series of meetings starting February 16th. February 12th. First part of February to talk about historic preservation downtown, and part of the drivers is the relationship between the incentive for historic preservation and parking issues, which also kind of wrapped around with Rick Akers' property that was turned down for inclusion in the Historic Preservation District. So, I mean, that's a great point. That was 1977.
Yes, and we probably had another one 10 years later, and another one 10 years later, and I think they just copied it every time. And we never have since then, other than the businesses provided their own parking. And
Well,
that's difficult to do.
Do you have the actual study that went with it?
I don't know if I have it. I just keep some of
Actually,
it.
I'm pretty impressed you have that. If you do, maybe Dennis would like to have a copy.
I'll certainly make it available to him. I think the city probably has this June 8th, 1977 study, Central Area Special Improvement District for Public Parking.
My guess is we've got that in the file someplace, Jose.
Charlie does have that one, I think.
Tom?
Well, I was thinking this was a little premature anyway, because we've been talking about having a study session on parking downtown and parking on the city-owned land with the bridge, or whether or not we need the bridge. And I thought at the study session we'd bring up these past parking surveys and see what they said and what our follow-up was. And we haven't done that. So I don't know why we'd be talking about spending money with someone else doing it until we really get into it. I also wonder if the future, you brought up long-term, what happens if Mr. Ranke sells that land over there? Where do we go? Because that's getting to be awful valuable land to sit there with our parking. So I don't think we're ready to talk about anyone hiring any firm to do a survey for us right now until we look at past history. And I didn't know, I've been on city council, I started in 1997. I have never seen that survey you talk about going the bridge. Wherever it is, I'd like to see it. I brought that up a few times.
Yes, sir, you did, and then we sent out, actually, I'll recreate it, but we sent out a memo that we sent to the council. Charlie, I can't remember, 1999, but we'll furnish that for you where we actually had the cost estimates. So I think the comments we're getting here, Mayor, if I may, is exactly why we wanted to come to you tonight. Right now, I think staff is a little unclear exactly what the council wants us to do in terms of this parking. If you'd like us to schedule a study session, it sounds like that, I just think we're unclear whether we should be talking about specifically paving the floodplain, or whether is there some other specific solution that staff is supposed to be working on, because we're a little bit unclear exactly what our direction is from council.
Were you going to use the P-patch area? The Littleton Community Garden?
No, sir.
Probably north of it.
No, the analysis, Jose, that was done in 99, and we can send out the mapping for you, is basically north of the YMCA, the P-patch is to the east. So the P-patch was not involved. The analysis that we did was basically what we call the Littles Creek floodplain. Mm-hmm. So it's just that area north between the north of the Y, or now it's the Center for the Blind, and that building. And we had urban drainage take a look at it. We'd actually performed a little engineering analysis to make sure that in fact it could be done and meet the urban drainage requirements. And so we did some cost analyses, but it did not impact or touch the P-patch. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, to give a real-life example, and correct me, Charlie, or Dennis, if I'm getting this wrong, Ruth Graham is adding a second floor to the building that she purchased.
Correct.
To do that, she had to submit a site development plan and probably a PDO, which triggered a requirement for her to provide more. I think it's 6 more parking places. So she has to provide 6 off-street parking places, and there aren't 6 off-street parking places for her to provide. So Rinke offered to provide 6 places out of his parking lot, but his parking lot, he has to provide a certain number of places based on the square footage of his parking lot, and we're leasing some of those parking places for general use. So it's sort of like Mr. Kimmett that came down, is we have a series of requirements that we are following, and when we follow, that's causing some problems. And the biggest problem that's causing right now is related to parking and development, because almost everything that gets done downtown is going to have a PDO, if it's any size at all. When you do the PDO, you hit the parking requirement. When you hit the parking requirement, the question becomes, where do they get the space? And the answer may be, change the parking requirements for downtown. Don't require them to get any more spaces, which is basically what happened with Merle's. I mean, he came down, he asked for an exemption, he got an exemption. But for us to know whether that's the proper response, I think what we have to know is how many parking places are we talking about? Is it a 500 parking place deficit? If it is, then perhaps we can really fit into the 800 parking places that Charlie says that we have. However, 400 of those parking places, or 360-something, actually belong to RTD. And I don't know that we can, by regulation, designate people to use RTD's parking places after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, that gets a little tricky when you're saying go use somebody else's property to satisfy your parking things. So what I see this doing is, first of all, figuring out what deficit is it. Is it still 500 spaces? And I don't know what the answer to that is. Once they come up with a deficit figure, then the next step, I think, is look at what existing parking is there on public places, and do you want to consume that? And if the answer is you don't want to consume that, or there isn't enough, then the next step is, how do you go to satisfy that? And alternatives are across the tracks, purchase a lot, tear down rinkies. I mean, there's 4 or 5 things, and all of those are going to have a rough order of magnitude cost with them. And then once everybody knows the cost, then it's a question of how do you implement it, or do you implement it? But right now, what you have is somebody that's putting a second floor on their building and has to provide parking places, and there really isn't any place to go get the parking places. I mean, unless we expect Ruth to buy another property and tear down the building or consume the parking places on those buildings. And that's the same decision, that's the same requirements that everybody else is hit with, and you layer on top of that HPB and their incentive that does away with the requirement that some properties provide a portion of their parking places, and that just makes the problem potentially worse. So, Jim?
Well, was going to make a motion.
Okay.
Debbie, if you have discussion?
Yeah, I just have some comments. I can make them after your motion.
I'm going to move that the council approve a contract with Fair and Piers to do the downtown parking strategy study as we've discussed this evening.
Been moved to approve a contract to do the downtown parking study as discussed this evening. Is there a second? I'll second that. So it's been moved and seconded to approve a contract with, who are these guys?
Fair and Piers.
Okay. For the downtown parking study as presented. Discussion, Debbie.
Well, I don't support that. I don't support throwing another bunch of money. We've got a price in here of $51,425. To do a parking study, again, for us, when it seems to me that based on what you just said about Ruth, it may not be so much a surface problem as it is a policy and procedure problem. I look at twice a week I'm down in the Gaylord area, and Gaylord is 1 block of shopping. And I have to say, God bless the folks on Gaylord, but it doesn't hold a candle to what Littleton offers. one block of Littleton is 5 times the value of shopping and experience as Gaylord is. And that street it's life and death. It is constantly parked. People are parking on the sidewalk now because of the holiday, a little more crowds. People are all over the streets. Those streets are small and narrow, and they're all parking along them, and it is just chaos. But they're doing it, and they're getting out of their cars, and they're walking around, and they're shopping. And Gaylord isn't doing any parking studies, and they're not putting together, they're not spending tens of thousands of dollars to figure out how to fix a problem that they want. They want to have the energy that's created around there, and people are finding a way to get in there and shop. We've got a planning commission that is in the middle of trying to figure out the CA. They're working on that. We've got a meeting coming up with HP. I agree with Tom, we haven't had the study session discussion that I think we needed to have on this parking thing to really vet out where we are on this. I can understand staff's confusion because I keep saying one time looks like, yeah, we're going and we need one, and then no, there's not a problem. Yes, there's a problem. No, there's, and then, so I don't think I'm not ready to spend that kind of money and send anybody on a study mission. We've got these studies. You've got to give these people very good direction, very clear expectations in order to get your money's worth out of it. And I don't feel like we're there with that. And I think that we need to there's some things that we can do that would get us into a much better train of thought, a much better track of thinking, where we can get a little more in sync with staff, with planning, with historic, with the downtown merchants. Jim, I loved what you said about get into those neighborhoods and get some of that information. But we can do that. We don't need a firm to do that for us. We can send out some information. We can have some community meetings. You can get some of this. If at some point it becomes, the data and the information is so overwhelming, or we just have dug ourselves into another parking lot dead zone, we can always call in the help, call in transportation consultants to help us, but right now, no.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I agree with Debbie. I'm going to vote against the motion. I think this is premature. I think there are things we can do, including relaxing parking requirements, for example, in the situation that Ruth is in. I think we need to wait for at least a preliminary insight into the CA comp plan study. And I think we need to see what the impact is, if indeed RTD, I thought they were fairly soon putting in parking fees at the lots. We might see an exodus of people out of those lots all over our streets and so forth. And if that starts happening, that has different implications for us. So, people may park more in the Stern Park neighborhood, or they may park more wherever they can find downtown. So I think it's premature.
Further discussion?
Look,
John?
I don't know how many times parking has come up, at least over the last 8 years I've been on council, but we've got old parking studies. They contradict each other. We have council members, depending upon who the council members are from year to year, that either believe the studies or don't believe them. And I think it's time to get a handle on, and everything's changed downtown from when those parking studies were done. We didn't have 5, 6, 7 restaurants downtown and a very successful town hall arts center. And I think we need to get a handle on where we are today, not where we were in 1997 or 1977. And the only way we're going to do that is to have some professionals come in, do the study, and present alternatives to us. Then, as a council, we have something to work with. And we're going to flounder around for another year, and a year from now, we're going to be talking about a parking study. So I say let's get it done and let's go ahead and find out what the situation is downtown, and if there is a problem, how do we deal with it? So I'll support the motion.
I've already said it was premature, and the Town Hall Arts Center was here long before, in 1997. You mentioned Gaylord. Hell, you ought to go Pearl Street. They got more restaurants than we have, and they don't have parking. But we still need to have our own little discussion of it, study session, before we go into this. It's too premature. I'll vote no.
Anyone else?
And I'd like to comment. I don't think that anything that I said or Debbie said or Tom said says that we need to be waiting a year or so on this. I think the study session fairly soon, since that's been on our list for over 10 months, 11 months, is a way to have a little more dialogue on this and talk about whether or not we can change some of our requirements and other issues that we can do before diving in to the cost of this.
Any further discussion? Charlie? Did you say that Mr. Fessler is now with consultants?
That's what he says he is, yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion is to approve the contract with Fair and Pierce to do the downtown parking study. Yes vote obviously does the study, and no vote doesn't.
The vote is 3 in favor, with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Mulvey, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion is defeated.
Okay. That takes us to item, thank you, Mr. Bloston and Mr. Swain and consultants. That brings us to the added item 9E, which is
D.
Oh, yes, I don't want to skip D.
You did that on purpose.
I got your back.
I don't have my glasses.
I know him.
Okay. Item 9D is a motion to approve the annual salary for the city manager. And we had a executive session on November 18th to evaluate the performance of the city manager and to determine an appropriate salary increase. At that meeting, the council came to the conclusion that although nobody's perfect, we think that the city manager is functioning at a high level. There's a number of factors that led to that decision, which are delineated in the council communication for that. When we had our next executive session with Jim Woods in attendance to discuss the salary, Mr. Woods asked us that we reduce the amount of raise to 3% because that was the average salary that was being budgeted for all the city employees. And with the economic conditions, he thought that was most appropriate. So the motion that you have in front of you is for the 3% salary increase effective from September 1st of this year. We're still in 2008. It's been a long night. So somebody want to make a motion, please.
I move that the city manager's salary be increased by 3% effective September 1, 2008.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, increase the city manager's salary by 3%. Any further discussion? So we're ready to vote.
I'm sorry, which second are you using?
I second.
Okay.
They both seconded.
Okay. That's all right.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Cole.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved. Thank you very much.
Sorry for trying to slip that by you. And by the way, good job. We're pleased with your performance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, that now gets us to 9E. Ms. Nardi. We have a proposed schedule Here it is.
Mayor, I didn't give that to anybody but you.
Oh, well, in that case, I'm the only one that has the 2008 outreach schedule. And the issue is, we have some potential meetings in January and February. Last year, what we chose to do was to just schedule the meetings for the beginning of the year, and then at the workshop, talk about whether we wanted to have the same type of outreach and meet with the same group of people. I'm anticipating that we'll want to do that at the workshop again this year, but that still means that we have a January opening for a meeting and potentially a February opening, correct?
My question, what kind of started all this, is that I have a press release ready to go for board and commission vacancies because the deadline's January 31st. We try to put in there the evenings that you have scheduled for interviews so that those applicants know to pencil that date in. So my question about when we might want to do board and commission interviews also led to the whole outreach schedule. And also, typically in the month of January, you've had a meeting with the state legislators. And in the past, we didn't really get around to asking you about that till after the first of the year, and then it was kind of too late, and the turnout hasn't been real good on that. The mayor suggested that maybe you have a meeting with the state legislators. That's typically a breakfast, and do that on Thursday, January 8th, and that would be before the legislative session starts. And I'll let him articulate why he thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, if we're meeting with our legislators because we want them to do something, waiting until the session starts, they probably already have their 5 bills picked out that they're going to carry. So actually, we ought to be meeting with them probably in December rather than earlier, or even earlier. You have to do it after the election in case you have a new face. The other alternative is if you're meeting with the legislators to try and find out what's happening in the session, then January is probably too early. You really probably want to do it in February sometime, or maybe even early March. So one of the things that we have to decide is, do we want to still have a January breakfast meeting with the legislatures? Because we have to give them some advance notice so they can put it on their daytimers.
I can tell you, Doug, Kelly's exactly right. Once the legislative session starts, you've got a very, very limited amount of time you can talk with them because they've already got their bills in. As a matter of fact, most of them have filed their bills before the 1st of December, except those that were just brand newly elected. If they ran for re-election, they already knew what they were going to do. So I think it's very late to try to do it, and particularly try to do it after the session began. So hadn't thought about having it January 8th. That's probably a brilliant stroke.
Well, January 8th is probably too late anyway, but it's better than
28th.
Better than the 28th.
When does the legislature convene? I thought it convened that first week.
I think it convenes, I'm not positive, but I think it convenes the following Monday, which would be the 12th. But that, I may be wrong, I don't know.
Yeah, that's, I thought I heard otherwise the other day, but I might be wrong.
Well, and the other question is if you wanted to follow sort of the same pattern that you followed last year with board and commission interviews, could we schedule those for February 23rd, 24th, and 25th, which is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? If you don't need all 3 nights, then you don't have to take them, but at least we'd have them set aside.
Well,
what days?
24th,
Study session.
25th, 26th, and 27th is a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I think in 2008 you did it on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And so I was just following the same pattern of a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
So that'd be the 23rd through the 25th. And we're doing our workshop in January 30th, right?
Yes, sir.
And the HPB is 16th?
February 12th, and the second night may be changed.
Okay.
Is that right? we're having trouble with the location for that.
All right, let's do this one at a time. I move that we set aside February 23rd, 24th, and 25th as the interview nights for the board and commission interviews.
Second.
Tom, we'll give it to Tom this time. All right. It's been moved and seconded to set aside February 23rd, 24th, and 25th for the board and commission interview meetings.
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Second issue is what to do in January for the breakfast. Do you, council, want to have it with the state legislators? If we do you want to have it on the 8th? Or do you want to have it more traditionally at the end of the month?
On the 8th. Whoops.
I move that we contact them and set the 8th as a date and see how many attendees we can get.
Okay, it's been moved to set the 8th, the morning of the 8th for the breakfast with the state legislators. Second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it goes to Jim this time.
Give it to Debbie.
Any discussion? Council ready to vote?
I just would like to comment. I think they're going to be busier than the devil then, and I'm wondering what we might accomplish other than jamming them up more. I mean, it seems to me we might be thinking to try to meet with them in November next year, put it later as they're looking at what they're planning to bring forward.
Well, I think November would be good for the following session, but that would be after.
Well, I think they already have their agendas this session, so.
Why don't we send out the invitation as soon as possible and see if there's any, if they are able to come. If we don't get any attendance, then
We can either put somebody else in or
We've canceled them in the past.
Cancel
because we
them.
couldn't get them.
I've been to breakfast where we only had one, and others where they get up at 8 o'clock and leave because they got appointments downtown. So
We'll
I
give
don't
it
know
a
how
shot
much
and let you know if you pass it tonight. We'll get on it tomorrow.
Okay.
But so just a question, so if they say, well, that's not good for us, then we miss the opportunity in January to meet with some other group?
No, if they say that's not good to us, then Kelly will come back and we'll do this again at our next meeting, which is
January 6th.
January 6th.
And then we can do fourth Thursday breakfast.
Yeah. Then you do a later breakfast, or you don't do one. Oh, wrong switch.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
And last but not least, your fourth Tuesday night in January of 2008, you met with the Planning Commission. Do you want to have a meeting on the fourth Tuesday of 2009 in January, the 20th, with Planning Commission?
the 27th.
Is that a holiday?
The 27th? That is,
27th, you're right.
you know, it might be worthwhile meeting with the Planning Commission again if they're going through struggling through the comp plan process.
Do they have
Yeah, I
any
think it's a
new
good
sheriff?
idea.
Not yet. Okay, I move that we meet on the 27th, the fourth Tuesday, with the Planning Commission.
Second.
Discussion?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that gets us to 12A, which is a resolution of the City Council adopting by reference the model municipal records retention system. That's a mouthful. Could you read that by title, please?
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, adopting by reference the model municipal records retention schedule.
Did everybody read that?
Good.
I do
The
have,
question is, did we retain it?
For how long?
2 years.
Yes.
Okay, the model retention schedule, as you can see in the council communication, was brought forth in 2001 by several city clerks in the northern area of the state and the state archivist. This schedule was worked on for well over a year. It is a very comprehensive schedule. It covers just about every kind of imaginable document that you could imagine. At this time, this is our model retention schedule. It's very short, it's very vague, and it has not been updated since 1996. Yes, since 1996. So I am proposing that the City of Littleton adopt this model retention schedule for all of the departments in the city. And I don't need to read you the council communication because I'm sure you all read the council communication, and it gives you all of the positive things that I think that it's going to bring to our records management program here in the City of Littleton. It is a money saver. It is a time saver for both the state and the city and the clerk's office. And I think it's a valuable piece of work that was worked on and thought about long and hard. It wasn't just thrown out there. And it's been approved from the state's attorney general down to the many clerks and their cities in the state of Colorado.
Questions for Wendy? Jim?
Wendy, have our other city department heads here had the opportunity to look to see how these record archival is going to be affecting them?
No, because they come to me to get their retention schedules right now. All of their retention schedules, that packet right there comes through me because I do it through the state archivists right now. And since it hasn't been updated since 1996, before I send this resolution into the state, I will make sure that all of the department heads look over the book. It's very accessible on the web. They can all get in, have a look at it. If they find that that there's something in there that they're not comfortable with saving or they want to get rid of sooner or they want to save longer than what's in the model retention schedule, I can bring the resolution back and we can modify it to make our own adjustments to it if we choose to do that. Yes, it can be amended.
I would feel very comfortable doing that because I just want to make sure our department heads know how specifically this is going to affect them. And I hate to be adopting something that they haven't had an opportunity to at least have input to you as to how it would affect them.
Okay. Could we not
Or delay it until
suggest some changes now that they could also see?
Sure.
Is that in order?
Sure.
So on page 8.1, the committee records, the first paragraph there says ad hoc committees, ongoing and ad hoc committees made up of only governing body members. Well, I've been on a couple of council committees this year, that ad hoc committees that also included some staff. And like the audit committee, I think if we have minutes on ad hoc committees that include some staff people, or if ever somebody other than staff in council, that we should have minutes of those too, if there are minutes taken.
Councilmember Cole, minutes are always permanent. Any minutes that are taken are always permanent. And it
Yeah, but except here it says committees made up of only that particular item says only governing body members.
8.1?
The other area where, that are covered under task forces, committees, authorities, boards, and commissions are all under Schedule 4.
Yeah, but I'm not talking task forces, and I'm not talking boards, commissions, I'm talking ad hoc committees. As I said, the audit committee, we had a committee with the search committees, and the evaluation, goals, objectives, evaluation committee for both city attorney and city manager. So that's different from those others. And they, at least some of those, had people other than members of council on them.
Are you at 8.10?
Excuse me, I'm on page,
8.45.
I'm on page 8.1, and the item is 8.45. I'm sorry.
It's at the bottom. And the thing is the only in the first sentence.
That's council, that's up to council. All of these changes would have to go to the Secretary of, the State Archivist for him to approve before the book in general would be approved.
Okay, well, that's one. Then on page 8.3, item 8.13, well, 8.130, notices of meetings. I just have a question for clarification. How do we document posting online?
You have a footprint on the web page. That's documented forever on the web page. You can go back and search somebody's hard drive, but ours are documented that we keep them on there. Well, we will, through Granicus, keep them on the website for a year. And right now, I just have that we have put them on the website because it is required by the council for us to post at those three places, at those 4 places.
I think Mr. Cortez wants to come down and talk.
Not to weigh in on this, but
Who are we?
okay. When Wendy was hired, we talked about our retention schedule, and what I presented to her was a creeping problem of storage space, and having someone in the city that would override or oversee the whole process of retention. For me, right at this point, is to make sure that we have a process in place that departments can go to Wendy, know that there's a schedule. Wendy can go to them and remind them that there is limited space in a certain areas. Right now, finance, city attorney's office, HR, city clerk, all occupy one small area. And we do the best we can, and we do go through it from time to time. But now it's going to be, we're going to do it. This is a schedule. This is what you need to do. Because we are, and as you know from the budget process, we were looking at storage off-site because we're getting to a point. There's some things you have to keep by state, and that's what she's doing to make sure we keep those records. If there's something that is of question, minutes to a meeting or something, we're not going to quibble as much on that. I'm just trying to give you a bigger perspective of what we're looking at. And these have been thought out pretty thoroughly. I don't know if there's anything else I can say, except Wendy's really working under my direction to get a handle on this. And she said, we need to do this first to work. with our department, so the bigger issue is storage.
Well, I think this is an excellent idea. However, what Dr. Cole was asking, I think, was for proof of publication. When we pass a first reading, we specify words published.
Yes.
And those are a number of different locations. And now it's coming back to me. I think the clerk signs an affidavit when it goes on the website, don't you?
I can sign an affidavit. I keep all of the agendas, and I know that they've all been posted. If someone asked for proof, I would sign an affidavit that said, yes, this has been on the website, this has been at Bemis Library, this is at the City Center, and this is at the museum.
Okay.
So yes, I would do that if someone asked.
Any other questions?
Yeah, well, I still have a couple of other questions, okay? And I appreciate the purpose of this, and I fully support it, but I at least want to ask questions here. On 8.4, 8.185, the items relating to, well, B and C, how long do we currently keep these things?
You have a permanent copy of the DVD forever. The DVD, there's a permanent copy. Right now, and very honestly, so when I got here, I couldn't find any recordings, just like on the little digital recorder that I have. But I have been keeping them since I've been here, and I would tonight be getting rid of my first set of recordings because I've been here for 6 months today. So it's... So,
I mean, part of my concern is that, well, and I thought when I asked this at a previous meeting, not in this context, that I was told, as you're saying, they're, capped and capped. But 6 months does not seem to me adequate time to keep something.
But that's just the audio recording after the minutes are approved. That's only the audio recording.
This is audio or video?
Well, our videos, we have permanent retention on our videos.
Yes, but if a Mack truck runs over a whole bunch of people and then they look at this document, I mean, whoever comes in after everybody's gotten run over, they look at this document and it says only 6 months. So...
I think what you're proposing is to remove or video from there.
To remove or to modify?
To remove.
So we can't modify, we can only remove?
Well, you can modify, but removing the or video recordings would make this pertain just to audio.
Also says that these are recordings typically used to prepare minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a permanent record that's not used to prepare minutes.
Right.
Is there another place in this document that talks about the permanent record of the meetings?
The permanent record of the minutes when they're finished.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
So that's covered.
That is, sorry, I just had it.
There was something in here about you could...
Hang on a
I'm
second.
sorry.
8.110, minutes and supporting documentation, that's a permanent. That means the packets that we provide to council and the minutes that I produce and you approve are permanent.
Official record and supporting documentations, that could include the video.
Yes.
So, okay.
Okay. Next question.
In our study session, we're now in action item only minutes for study session. Well, pretty much action item only. So if somebody wanted to go back after those minutes are prepared and see what was said in those meetings, we would not necessarily have audio or video.
Yes, we would have the video of them, which, according to Wendy, is covered under a different section, which is on 8-2.
On which?
8-2.
Page 8-2.
Page 8-2, 8.110.
Mayor, we also, and council, we have also, tonight are having our practice session on Granicus, and people can go back, well, they can't go back before right now, but after tonight and in the future, they'll be able to go back, and we have a dedicated server that will keep our minutes and recordings of our meetings forever. And you can go in, I was in training for 3 days last week, and you can go in and match up the video with the minutes. You click on it, there it is, all the documentation's there, all the minutes are there, and you can also make a DVD that has that same specifications to be able to do that on the DVD also. You can put it into your computer, you can click on it, just like you would be watching it on the web. And that will also be a permanent record, both of those. So we have permanent records all over the city between the written minutes, the DVD that's made that Wilton makes, and now we've got Granicus.
Further questions?
I'm still not seeing how that, there's a place that says that's going to be kept, but I'm not understanding that, given the timelines it says here.
Well, minutes and supporting documentation on 8.110. See where below where it says retention permanent.
Yeah. No, I see, I know where it is. Let me just find it.
Council, what I might suggest is that we approve this as it is right now.
I so move.
Okay. Or a second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton adopting by reference the model municipal records retention schedule. Discussion. My guess is we may need to modify this in the future as we come up with things that are specific to Littleton, and part of that may come out of the comments that come back from department heads on different things. Well, you got to start somewhere. And,
I have a comment.
Yes.
Huge kudos, Wendy, to you and the other city clerks who worked over a year on putting this together. As an organizer, it's becoming more and more important, I think, for people to be able to come up with a system of how to retain and how long to retain, because it is becoming more and more difficult to find documents without that system. So I think that we have a great deal of redundancy in the way that we keep our records for the obvious reasons, and to have a formula for purging and for storing and for a timeline in addition to all of that, I think only tightens up the system and makes us more secure in our record keeping. It's good, huge kudos. And we have a sidebar. Back up, Tom.
Sorry, offline. Any further discussion? I wish I had a retention schedule for the stuff in my basement. Councilman Cole?
Purge, it's all
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That brings us to reports. Mr. City Manager.
4 quick items, Council. I sent you a memo on our apartment inspection program, and just as I said, that program is going very well. But to keep those frontline inspectors focused and on track, We'd like to use some of the salary that we've already appropriated, but we don't think we'll need yet, to put Mark Behrens on for full-time. It'd be a contract position, so there's no permanent commitment, but that would allow us to keep those 3 permanent inspectors real focused on that northeast area. So just if you had any concerns about it, wanted to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll move forward and convert for 2009, convert Mark to full-time. Yes, ma'am.
I do support it. I think it's important what we're doing up there, and I know that it's taken its toll on the staff. They're very committed to it, and they're working very hard on it. By doing this, what I also would hope, though, is that we are able to keep a very active enforcement operation throughout the city. There's been a couple of things, particularly along Santa Fe and near the South Platte River, that are, I think, a huge environmental problem right now, and those things cannot go unattended. So shorthandedness
that's exactly the reason, because we really can't sustain. We would need that's the reason Dennis and Jim Thielen are proposing this, so that we don't fall behind in taking care of the rest of the city. And that's why we're also moving just from some other not salary accounts, but some other accounts that Jim had unencumbered. We're going to bring in a contract administrative person to help do filing and paperwork. But that's really the core behind this, Debbie, is that we can, without that, I don't think we could continue to sustain the inspections up in the northeast area without having some things start to slide.
Okay, I mean, that's where...
So we're very sensitive to that.
As long as it's equal priorities.
Yes, ma'am.
Any objection to what Jim proposes?
Thank you, and we'll note that, Debbie, because we're very sensitive about not having it slide in the other parts of the community. Item 2, just wanted to, this is an FYI, just for council. I know when we talked to you during budget, we talked about the immigrant initiative and the fact that their funding runs out next June 30th. That we didn't, again, in a very tight budget, I didn't feel that I could make a proposal to you for the city to pick that up, but said we were going to continue to work with the committee looking for grants. We are doing that, and I just wanted to let you know there is a grant program through the International City Managers Association. They've gotten a challenge grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it's targeted specifically at what is the role of public libraries in providing services to the immigrant community. Well, obviously, that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. So we intend to submit a grant for that, and the idea would be to kind of use Littleton and how we've used Bemis as kind of a model project that could really then go on a teaching webinars for other libraries. There's no cash commitment from the city. All we would be putting up would be the in-kind that we're already doing now. You know, we provide them space up at Bemis. We do the accounting. So I don't see any financial impact on us. And I think this is going to be very competitive. I mean, it's a national grant program, so I don't know what our chances are. But wanted to let you know that it has to be in January 9th. So we're going to go ahead and submit that on the part of Bemis. But I wanted to let you know we're continuing to work that and try to secure funding for that program. If you have any questions.
When do you find out about the community development block grant application?
You know, I think in January or February is what I recall, David Flagg. Yeah, so that's another one we still have pending. So early in the year, Doug. We should hear on that one. Third item, again, this is an FYI. In the last couple of, even just in the last week or so, we seem to be having a resurgence of calls on coyotes. And I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago, but the Centennial City Council held a big kind of town hall meeting over there. And Kelly and I both had a gentleman today that gave us quite a
Earful?
Animated lecture about how, because we kind of talked about the coexistence and this and that, and he wasn't quite hearing much about excuses about why government couldn't do something, but we said we're this is something we're struggling with. So we're still tracking the data. I did get a letter today from the Colorado Division of Wildlife. They are holding a major forum in Lakewood in February, just because this whole issue of the coyotes is affecting everybody. We're still trying to get the information out, the awareness, tell people to coexist, look out for your pets, but you may be hearing this from your constituents, so just wanted to let you know, for some reason there's been a lot of activity in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if any of you have been contacted by citizens, but just something to have on your radar screen. Fourth item is just to remind you, and I believe Marlene told me 6 of you, I gave a tour to Debbie Brinkman today of the Community Services Building, and are all the 6 of you going to take the tour on Thursday?
Did you contact Rebecca, by the way?
I believe I asked, I'll check with Marlene, but I believe she did.
I asked her Sunday, she said yes. She was
Great, because I forgot to do that.
So just to remind you, that's a 1:30, and we will post it.
The building's been heated and...
No, it is not heated. It was warmer outside than it was in the building
and don't
today.
wear your best suit, Tom. It's a little bit dirty, not filthy, but don't dress up for this. Dress warm.
Do we have lights in there to see?
The electricity's on, yes, sir. We don't have to use flashlights or lanterns or anything, but it was a little nippy today.
And we meet over there?
I think that'd be the most convenient. Yeah, just meet there, and we'll take you through. Okay? That's all.
Thank you, and thank you for the Northeast neighborhood emphasis, too.
Sure.
City Attorney.
Two questions.
Oh, sorry.
On other issues, follow-up?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Our request for ordinance related to open space fees for the assisted living?
Yeah, Jan Dickinson has been doing some research on that, and we will come forward with some proposals for you, looking at other options that are out there. So we don't have anything for you yet, but we will get that.
When do we think?
I don't know if you want to do that in a study session or how you want to do it, but we can certainly get for you fairly quickly, whatever your schedule is. So.
I don't know what council wants.
Put it on the list.
Okay.
February 10th, we've got a study session reviewing ordinance exempting wind power. Maybe we could do it then.
Well, I think in January, although this isn't explicitly stated on our agenda for the workshop, that normally we go through and try and prioritize what we do for study session topics.
But Jim's got January and February listed on our sessions already. I mean, if we're going to ask these guys to do this stuff, I think we got to give them a date.
Can you be ready by January? I'm sorry, February, what was it?
February 10th.
Sure. Okay.
And the other question, follow-up, at the December 2nd meeting, we had a citizen come requesting that we set some restrictions on how close the liquor stores could be, and you said you would get us some examples from other cities.
I only received one example, but I got another city clerk who they're in the process of approving one, and I'm going to see if I can get theirs also so that I can provide those to the council.
Thank you.
As soon as I receive them, put them in your packet.
Thank you.
When you send it to us, why don't you also send it to the booze board, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Peggy?
No, thank you.
City Attorney?
I don't have anything.
Jose?
Yes, with this coyote problem that we're having, they were having quite a problem in Yellowstone till they reintroduced the wolf. Now, through the history of the wolf, it has never been known that one of them ever attacked a man or killed a person. So it could be a solution.
You want to start a wolf introduction program here? Okay. We'll follow up on that.
Just make sure that it's his name that's behind it.
The Jose Trujillo Wolf Reintroduction Program.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that would be the Memorial Jose Trujillo Wolf Introduction Program. Anything else, Jose?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Deb?
No report.
John?
Just a question whether or not council wishes to go into an executive session this evening. If so, we need to pass a motion.
I think we do, and yes.
I move we go into executive session under Colorado Revised Statute 246402, paren 4, paren B, to consult attorney on specific legal questions, specifically water fund and annexations.
It's been moved to go into an executive session after the end of the reports. Is there a second?
Second.
Debbie? Takes 5 votes. Any discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Anything else, John?
Other than that, Merry Christmas to everyone. Be safe and sane.
Tom?
I see our museum director is here. I wonder if he could come down and tell us how it went Sunday night. The weather was a little rough, I guess.
Evening, Council. You may want to ask volunteer Bloston, who has a differing opinion, but in all truth, it was a pretty good evening. It's a ticketed event. We sell 1,500 tickets. We did sell, I think, 1,485 of them. We had about 1,000 people show up, which was about 900 more than I thought we might have, given the weather. It was very cold, but as Charlie can indicate, if you dressed in layers, you were just fine. All in all, it was a very nice evening. It was clear but really cold, but a good turnout. And we actually went through almost all the resources that we had. So I think, given what the conditions were, it was about as good as you could expect.
I'm proud of you.
Charlie was very brave throughout.
I have nothing.
Jim?
I love December because most of the meetings I go to got canceled. I will want to point out to council, though, in the latest Colorado municipalities, there is an article in there about the address locator project, and it comes through the Sales Tax Simplification Committee through CML. I've been appointed to that, but I found out very early on that I was one of the very few elected people on there, outside of some elected city treasurers. So Eric Green has been going, and now he is part of the committee and keeping track of that. Because I'm still on the committee, I get a copy of all their emails, and their questions that they ask are really right on target. And I think eventually, when they finally get this all worked out, it will be a tremendous asset to not only this city, but for all the communities in the state. So I thank Eric for participating in that. I think it's very good. That's all I've got.
Peggy?
I have a few things. I did want to, I think council knows roughly about the dates and time on this, but I want to make sure the public knows. Public is invited to discuss historic preservation in Littleton. There are going to be 2 public forums from 7 to 9 p.m. First one is on February 12th at the museum. The second one is February 26th at a location to be determined. The agenda will include an open exchange of ideas on the importance, direction, and framework of historic preservation in Littleton to help evolve a long-term preservation philosophy for the city. Nora Winter, a nationally noted preservationist professional, will facilitate both of those discussions. So for people whose calendars are filling up fast, I wanted to give heads up on that. Second, and I have about 4 things here. Second question about the status of plans for charter celebration that we, I think, suggested we have a couple months ago for next year.
Somebody's pointing at somebody back here.
Yeah, some.
Jim Nams, do you want to talk about the charter celebration?
I can talk a little bit about it. Again, Council, we don't have anything concrete laid out yet, but we are planning to do sort of a mini symposium on the charter experience that Littleton went through and kind of that system of governance and how it developed here in Colorado. We've looked at about 3 or 4 potential speakers, and we're continuing to kind of look at what we can do in that direction. That's the main thing that we have proposed at the museum, to have at the museum.
So is this going to be a contained inside or a more expansive event?
You mean contained
like on the
within
grounds
museum?
and?
Oh no, it would be like a typical symposium, a lecture, a panel of some sort. We'd do it in the lecture hall at the museum.
Okay, I was thinking we were going to have something a little more expansive, but
there may well be some sort of a celebration also. I think Kelly was talking about doing something in that area.
And I guess council.
We weren't planning to do that portion of it. We were planning to do something sort of as a more of an ancillary type of an event in honor of the charter anniversary.
Perhaps a reading of the charter?
We might well find Max Smith to reprise his speech from earlier this year, last year, I guess it was.
I guess I would ask for some direction if you want us to do something more than what the museum has planned. We're happy to do something else, but I don't know. It's not the sexiest subject to plan a party around.
Well, yeah, but that's why it would be nice to have, have some kind of festivity. So, but if council doesn't think that, I thought when we asked about that, we said something more than a speaker or whatever. Where people could be, frolicky or whatever, but maybe rest of council didn't want frolic.
Next year is also the 50th anniversary of South Suburban, and you may want to get together with Gene
Ray.
What is it?
Ray.
And, find out what they're planning, because I know they have been talking about a celebration of some kind next year, and maybe we have one big bash rather than a couple of little parties.
Okay, can definitely do that.
Barbecue. It's always good.
Use one of their parks.
And pay for it.
No food in the museum.
All right. Anything else?
A couple short other things. I personally want to express appreciation to anybody who's out there still watching, and anybody in here who's participated with the Santa Claus shop, all the volunteers for that, all the people who have been contributing to the interfaith and other efforts to help people during the holiday season and in other ways during this very difficult economic time. And finally, I want to thank Kelly Nardi and staff for the calendar. We did honor the photographers and other people, but we didn't honor the staff who put that together, and I would like to honor them too.
You should acknowledge those of us who have to put up with her during that process.
Well, that's...
Oh, Jim, we gave you a raise.
I want to renegotiate.
All right, anything else?
No, thank you.
Jim?
I failed to mention on the CML magazine, the front cover is Downtown Main Street, Littleton, Colorado. And I forgot to mention that. In the
Oh,
winter
it is,
scene,
isn't it?
looking
Yes.
toward the mountains, that's
Yes.
the melting
Carnegie,
pot in the
yeah.
background.
Yeah.
So it's very, very good.
All
A little
right.
publicity out of that.
No Dr. Cog report?
Even though it's no enhanced intersections. Dr. Cog, we meet tomorrow night with an extremely lengthy agenda.
Okay. We are recessing to executive session. We will not be taking any formal action when we come back. So, Wilton, you can go home.
Thank you.